Someone remembered to plug in the fax machine. We've got transfers everywhere. What a time. Welcome back to Interjections. It's great to be back. Looking forward to talking about all of Inter's market activity today. I'm your host, Andrew. I've got Mikko and Jay here with me. Mikko, nice to hear your lovely voice again.
Okay. Thank you, Mister. Yeah, good to be back. It's been a while, and yeah, indeed, nice to see that there is actually something happening in the transfer front. Yeah, looking forward to discuss all the details and also what might be coming up later in the window.
Jay, great to be back. It's been a long time since we've talked. I don't think you've taken part in many of these summer subitos we were doing to kill the time. But let's just start with the big news of the weekend. Can you give us your thoughts on Milan's triumphant victory over Man U?
I too longed to hear the dulcet tones of Mikko's voice, the same way Penelope pined for Odysseus as he attempted to return home from the Trojan War, the same way Ruben Amorim returned to Old Trafford and triumphantly got these beggars out of here by trashing them in their own home, 4-2, outplayed on every metric, possession, XG, shots on target, passing completion, and it was just, Interisti are in for a rude awakening this season.
That's right. You hit on a cultural lightning rod that I'd love to dive deeper into at some point, which is not the politics of the Odyssey, but rather EPL fans using that "get these beggars out of here" meme relentlessly whenever Inter or really any Italian club show up for transfer negotiations. I'm like, sorry guys, we don't have
Really?
50 million to spend on your backup players.
They've been doing that? That's actually pretty funny.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
like, if you go to like the Spurs, fandom online, when they saw they were only getting 30 million for Spence, it was "get these beggars out of here."
Okay, I'll give credit where it's due. I think that's incredibly funny.
Well, let's get into the sudden surge in transfer action. I don't know what someone put in Marazzo Nocilio's cereal this week, but they decided they were going to wake up and make some moves. So we'll start with the big acquisition. Djed Spence officially coming over from Tottenham. Uh, this one, I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but after reports initially that Spurs wanted 45 million for him during the week after the World Cup, everyone laughed this one off because why would you spend 45 million on a backup wingback from 17th place Tottenham? But for whatever reason, his price fell. I think it's a combination of no one actually believed he was worth that much money, and they had to sell him because he was a redundant player to the squad. So we ended up getting him for about 30 million, 35 million when you include bonuses. And it's an interesting profile. I mean, this is your Dumfries replacement. This is the one guy we signed this year who is theoretically jumping into the starting 11 of this team. So it's going to be the most important signing we make this summer, barring something just absolutely crazy happening. So there's a lot to like in terms of he has that palestra to him where the dribbling is off the charts. Like if you look at his stats, if you look at his videos, he knows how to get behind defenses. He knows how to get by players. And that's something we've sorely lacked. And it's something Kivu clearly values because we've been looking for it in players in both the midfield and the wingback spots. So from that perspective, like you can get excited about it. I mean, he's fast. He's going to offer something a little different. But it is a little, it's not the perfect fit. And when you see his goals and assist stats from last season, you have to stop and ask yourself, is this really the best we can do? I think this guy had 0 goals and 0 assists while starting several games for Spurs last year. And the way that's been rationalized away is that he spent last year playing on the left because Pedro Porro was playing on the right and he was on his unnatural foot, blah, blah, blah. But still, it's hard to deny that we're signing someone who basically had no attacking output last year. So while the dribbling is nice, even the defensive prowess is nice, like where are the Where are the crosses? Where are the goals going to come from? Given how poorly this Mercato went at wingback with Palestra and then Kaleli and then just a bunch of options that weren't appealing, there was never going to be anything we did here that excited me. There was never going to be a signing that was a home run. So I'm just choosing to trust the scouting. This can't be worse than Luis Henrique, right? Right? So it's hard to get overly excited about this. We seem to be, and we'll talk about this more later, our transfer hypothesis this summer sure feels like sign squad level players from England and hope that when they come to a league that's less physical, less pacey, there's a natural step up in their ability and their level, sort of the McTominay path. So, Jay, I know you're a devout EPL follower. You have an Arsenal kit at home. How do you feel about the Djed Spence signing?
I think it is a incredibly interesting move. I think he's in a position where, or it's make or break time for him. I think we've either bought the stock right at the correct time before it takes off, or it might continue to fluctuate and just not really appreciate the way we hope it would. I say that because Spence is a guy who joined Tottenham, if I'm not mistaken, way back when Conte took over the club, and I seem to recall fans being quite hyped up about him. I think he joined from Middlesbrough, something along those lines. I remember, I remember one fan adamant that Perisic was signed to be Djed Spence's backup, and I was like, "You guys are in for a fucking rude awakening here." But point is, he's never really been much of a established core player at Spurs either. He's had some loans, including one to Genoa, which was a dismal failure. It's only very recently that he's kind of come into the Spurs side as as an important piece of the squad, and I use my words very carefully there, as opposed to calling him like a nailed-on starter, because I don't think he is. Um, on top of that, there's that weird situation you mentioned where he, despite being right-footed, is or has played his best games on the left, most notably or most recently for England in the World Cup, where he also did play on the right occasionally. And he's known for his lack of attacking output. I think he has just a handful of goals across his entire professional career, whereas DeMarco has, gets at least a handful of goals per season, right? And so this is a very particular skill set that we've brought into the club. And just given where he's at in his Tottenham career, the way he performed at the World Cup, which for what it's worth, I don't think it was like as good at it as everyone's saying, although I do think it was undoubtedly strong and one of England's highlights. But again, we're not talking like James Rodriguez back in 2010 levels of performance here. Regardless, it seems like we've got him at a great time, or the risk here is that the step up to a bigger team, a different league, a different country, a different environment, a different language, a different position, just a massive step out of his comfort zone, may be a bridge too far for this guy to cross. And I've seen old videos of his interviews with Rio Ferdinand that are doing the rounds again, and there's somewhat of a meme value to this guy as well. His very Gen Z kind of humor. At the same time, he walks into the interview wearing sunglasses and is like, I'm not scared of any player, kind of talking all this big talk. And so there's obviously a player with a lot of self-belief there as well. And all in all, I think it's, like I said, I just keep defaulting on this word, interesting. I find it a really interesting, intriguing transfer because there are so many variables up in the air. But again, just to come back down to the fundamental of him as our right wing back, I think he's poised to take off from here, but whether he does or not is going to be obviously I think the big story of the season. And part of me feels bad that Diouf's kind of unexpected meteoric rise to superstardom is being somewhat put on the ice for this guy, but I'm hoping that we can still make use of Diouf as an attacking option as well. I mean, feasibly, we could even play Diouf on the left occasionally, and we'll talk about Luis Enrique later, I'm sure, but I never really bought into this concept that Luis Enrique is like, he's better on the left than the right, and we should play him as DeMarcus backup instead. I haven't seen anything myself that makes me agree with the fans who think that. So what I'm making is there'll be plenty of space and time for Diouf to get some minutes as well. But as far as Spence goes, it's a really interesting, really intriguing acquisition, and I'm kind of like I'm less emotionally invested in it. Obviously, I want him to succeed. I want him to become fantastic for us, but I'm kind of just curious to see how it pans out because, like I said, there are so many variables to it. It's a great signing for that from that lens.
Mikko, we didn't really talk about the World Cup glow up Spence had, but it was undeniable. I mean, his highlights were everywhere on social media because he had some crazy tackles on Messi, among other players, where he was tracking back the length of the pitch and making these desperate defensive efforts. And that's really when Spurs fans in particular started pretending he was worth 50 million. So he had a hot World Cup, and we've seen players become overvalued because of World Cup performances, as long as you've been a fan of the sport. So are you concerned at all that this is simply us overreacting to what was 4 good games with England, or do you think the body of work, speaks to this valuation for the player?
Well, yeah, for the latter question, that's hard to say at this point. Initially, it was funny to follow the discussion among Tottenham fans and Inter fans about the price, because it kind of felt a bit that both were unsatisfied with the price, which is kind of hilarious and just proves how disconnected the markets are in EPL and then, well, the rest of Europe, or at least in Italy. Tottenham fans wanted more. Maybe Inter fans are seeing it's maybe a bit high price for such a player. But yeah, it's interesting. I totally agree with Jay that it is definitely an interesting acquisition, and the pricing thing in itself. Ausilio made some comment during the summer that he doesn't want to go after the World Cup kind of rising stars or whatever, players who do well there, and then we did just that. But I saw some stories that Spence was on our list already before the World Cup, like in May, and the price was lower, and then it kind of skyrocketed during the World Cup or after the World Cup, and then we wanted to kind of sit down and wait until we were able to kind of strike the deal with Tottenham. When I don't know, was there some dealings with Spence or with the player that okay, he wasn't interested moving elsewhere. I don't know. There weren't that many rumors like that there would be a move inside EPL. So maybe there weren't any interest to pay over 40 millions for the guy. Who knows? But I think the price is pretty good. I think there are some risks there in a sense that we would get another Luis Henrique type of transfer that it doesn't pan out, and we have this at least semi-expensive guy on our books. But somehow I feel that the risk is smaller with with the way Spence plays or what kind of a player he is. Like Jay mentioned that he's kind of a fast guy. He's used to this EPL football, and I feel it's easier to come from there to Serie A and be somewhat successful. Of course, there are always risks that somehow there isn't a fit, but I'm not super worried. And the price was okay. Maybe a bit on the high side on our perspective, but that's how it is when you buy from EPL clubs anyway, and that's clearly has been the priority that we want to get these guys who are kind of played there, who knows the tempo of football. If you want to kind of take it a few notches higher, we need to get these guys in. We just can't teach all our guys to do it. So it's easier to get the tempo football into the team this way. Yeah, I'm quite not super excited, but kind of it's super interesting to see like how does it fit in, because it's kind of the opposite of what Diouf is. Diouf is all about the attacking, and Spence is mostly about the defending. And now we are talking about the wingback position, where in theory you should have both. We have both, but in two players. So that's very very interesting to see how it's gonna pan out. Is it gonna be always both play like within one game they are always subbed in and off, or how Kivu is going to approach the games? Is it maybe it's game by game basis or something? But super interesting situation.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of 2 years ago when you had attacking options coming off the bench. So if you needed dribbling, you brought in Correa, but if you need some deadly finishing, you brought in Taremi.
Right.
So overall, I'd say I do agree with Jay's take that it's an interesting signing. I don't think you're going to see many strong opinions on it. I do want to note that this is the most expensive signing of the Oak Tree era. This is the most money they've spent on a player. Previously, Diouf's 25 million was the record. So to go to 30, 35 for Spence is noteworthy. Not really sure what the Oak Tree parameters are these days. Not really sure what cost considerations are relevant. We went out and signed John Stones, who's obviously 32 years old. We signed Spence, who has a more expensive profile, at least in terms of transfer fee. So it's a bit of a moving target, but I am glad to see us exceed the mythical 25 million limit. At least we know that isn't always going to be the case, that we're hard capped in the transfer fee we can spend on players. The other big news for the week is Frattesi leaving. So there was really no links anywhere for Frattesi all summer, and the prevailing thought was he wanted Juve because, let's be honest, if you're leaving Inter and you want to stay in Italy, Juve is the best you're going to be able to do, more likely than not. So aside from half-hearted interest from Juve, there was just nothing cooking with Frattesi all Mercato. So I was surprised when Lazio, who never signed anyone anymore, emerged as the favorite for the player. And it actually ended up working out reasonably well for us from a financials perspective. But I want to talk about this because it is an intriguing option. So we get the 5 million loan fee for Frattesi, which more or less covers his amortization on our books for this year. And then they have a 10 million purchase option that becomes mandatory if either they finish in the top half of the table or he makes a required number of appearances for Lazio. So you have to think it's more probable than not that they're obligated to buy Frattesi, and then we're also keeping a sell-on clause. And in a vacuum, you might think this is a disappointing fee, but we have to acknowledge he truly just had an awful season. He was not fit. He did not play. When he played, he did not play well. So coming off such a disappointing season, what was the market going to be? Hard to say, but this feels like for a player with 2 years left on his contract, a reasonable resolution. We have a vested stake in his future, so if he does improve, we'll get more money on the back ends. But Jay, I think everyone agrees it was time to move on. Frattesi just didn't suit our system, and I for one, think Frattesi is going to be successful at Lazio. I've seen a lot of Inter fans act like he's the worst footballer in the history of the world. I actually think he's quite talented. I think it's just a unique skill set that isn't conducive to the way we play, but I wouldn't be surprised at the slightest if he goes and succeeds at Lazio.
Yeah, you will find no Frattesi disrespect from me. I'm one of his bigger supporters, I feel. I think the way that he's been lampooned as some kind of like worse than Gagliardini type player is just it is just woefully incorrect. A lot of frustration, misdirected, and to speak on the profile of player that he is, I still feel, and this is where like I'm kind of screaming into the void here, but I still feel like he's a better passer than what he did show at Inter, right? And look, ultimately, you can be the best passer in the world, but if you can't show it on the pitch, then it doesn't matter for shit. So I get that, but I still feel like he is not anywhere near as limited as what we've seen in the last 2 seasons. Um, as far as him joining Lazio goes, uh, I don't know how much of a success he'll be. I don't quite agree with you there, and it's not because of Frattesi so much; it's because of Lazio themselves. I mean, coached by fucking Gattuso, if I'm not mistaken, they have some kind of transfer or financial bans that they've made no signings or close to no signings, and the core of the team is not that good to begin with. So, this is a post Immobile, post even like, I mean, they still got what's his name, Zaccagni, I guess, but like they're not a great side. Is the point I'm trying to make? There's a reason they've slipped from that, perennial sixth place, fifth, sixth place to like eighth, ninth, and lower. And I feel like they're going to really struggle to stay in the top half of the table this season. And those struggles, or that kind of environment, is never a great place for a new player to try and establish himself. So I don't know how successful he'll be. And like I said, that's mainly down to Lazio being a basket case. But personally, I hope he does really well. Personally, I'm glad he did not go to Juventus and that we found this very unexpected solution for him to stay in Italy, yet not go to one of our immediate rivals. And kind of surprised that he himself didn't, push for like a Champions League only team or anything like that. Or I guess neither Milan or Juve have Champions League football anyway, but you get my point. Yeah, what can I say? I wish him the best. And part of the reason that I'm so big on this guy is that I I feel like you can't. Well, we do, and I guess when you analyze it, you have to forcibly remove or separate the emotive side of things from the tactical, the results side of football as well. But Frattesi was just one of the guys, right, who might not make it from a certain perspective or might not be up to scratch from one perspective, but in terms of heart, he had mountains of it, right? Maybe up there with a Cherby as one of these warrior types, which seem to be a bit of a dying breed. And let's be real, it's the kind of personality that we somewhat lack. You can just see it in the intensity in his celebrations. That kind of, he spoke about that yellow gate in the Miazza belonging to him now, the one he climbed up and had his pants pulled down off when he scored the goal against, I can't remember, was it Verona or Udinese?
Verona, yes.
One of these late winners in our march to the Scudetto under Inzaghi. Yeah, you can see that kind of just raw, bubbling passion that he has, and again, I don't really see that. There's something just kind of refreshingly aggressive and animalistic about it that I personally really liked about him. And so we're losing that, which I think always sucks, and it sucks more that we might not have much of that left in the squad realistically. Um, but that's just the way it goes. So hopefully we can. If Frattesi, I feel like Frattesi was also a bit of a bandiera, not in the traditional sense of he's an established, well-respected player who always starts and has been at the club for a long time. He's only at the club for 3 years, and you know I'd be surprised if he made 20 appearances last season, even including 1 minute cameos, right? Felt like he played 5 games all season. Um, so it's not like he was a core player or a key player at any point, but I don't know. He felt like one of the guys, he felt like a kind of established presence within the locker room, at least for me. Part of that obviously is Italian. Part of that he's tied to these big moments and has these, in terms of like impact moments to games played kind of ratio, goals scored to games played. That's what makes him a cult. I don't even want to call him a cult hero because it seems like he's out of supporters, but that's what kind of raises his cult status value for me, and that's what I'll always appreciate about him. And so, yes, you'll hear no Frattesi slander from me.
Yeah, I mean, he's been part of some of the biggest moments in recent club history, and I do think like the fact he's Italian does play a role in like why we feel this familiarity level with him, this closeness to him. I know a lot of Inter fans are fed up with him, and I get it, but we'll always have Barcelona, we'll always have Verona, and like these are huge impact moments, and you need guys off the bench who change games. And there's no doubt there was a run 2 seasons ago, 3 seasons ago, where he was changing matches, and he deserves credit for that, even if it wasn't a good long term fit. So, Mikko, any reflections on Frattesi's career at Inter?
Well, I guess Jay put it so well. I agree everything what he said. Everything. I really I appreciated also Frattesi's way of when he came in the games last season and maybe 2 seasons ago. He was usually used when he came later on the pitch to um, how to say it, stabilize our game defensively there because we had no one else. He was most effective to be this body who is a bit more physical there, bit more eager, are willing to take these challenges in the midfield.
Yeah, he's an absolutely underrated defensive contributor. Like the amount of tackles he gets in, tracking back and tracks back and intercepts the ball from behind the player, all this kind of stuff. Massively underrated defensive contribution.
He has great positioning, and I mentioned this. Like I went to a couple Inter games in person last year, and like I was really stunned by his presence on the pitch. Like it felt like he was everywhere, and you don't really see that on TV. But like truly, like he was in passing lanes. He knew where the ball was going. Like I was impressed with his defensive prowess.
Yeah. So the issue why he's leaving because he didn't have enough impact in this team because for the obvious reasons he just wasn't a fit at all. That's just how it is. He wasn't able to find the positions. This kind of rotations in positions in midfield like the rest of our midfielders are capable, and he just never he never had that, and that's why he's leaving now. Uh, I want to make one comment, Andrew, about the numbers, by the way, of the deal. Maybe you missed them. Was it last Saturday? Yes, yesterday or Friday when the deal went through. There were originally this 1 million fee, 40 million option, and then the obligation and blah, blah, blah. But it changed to 5 million and 10 million, but there's no obligation anymore. So that was wiped off because of Lazio's some financial limitations. So they couldn't kind of on paper they couldn't commit to this 14 million option, which is well, it is what it is. This is how what you get when you deal with Lazio and Lotito. So it's only an option of 10 million. But I read that there's some 2 million easy to achieve bonuses on top of the 5 million loan fee, which kind of makes it almost a mandatory option, because are you gonna spend 5 to 7 million to a player who plays for you one season and then you let him walk if you don't pay the 10 million? I doubt that that's gonna happen. I think Lotito will find a way to make it work, unless Frattesi like injures himself badly or something. But I want to quickly comment on the decision why he chose Lazio. My theory is that he wants to kind of he wants to take this step in his career where he can get a role which is kind of centerpiece of the team. I read that Gattuso wanted Frattesi, and Frattesi was talked into this Lazio project, or well, so-called project, in a sense that he's gonna play. If he went to Juve or I don't know, whatever EPL club, I think it's much more riskier move for him. So I understand why he wants to do this. He picks a bit lower level club where he gets the trust from the coach. He gets the starting minutes and he can really kind of find himself again. But then what's gonna happen really? That's up for discussion. Like you mentioned, Gattuso, I don't know, maybe not the most stable option there. What if he gets sacked? What happens to Frattesi and so on? So there are question marks, but of course we all hope that he will do well. Inter will get rid of him from our books. He gets a good kind of a second chance in his career, so to speak. So let's hope he can do well there in Lazio.
Yeah, the whole Gattuso thing, you just have to assume he's going to be sacked by the by October or November, and then they'll get a real manager in there, and maybe their form will improve. I don't know. So I think those are the two big pieces of activity from the week I wanted to cover.
I actually wanted to kind of pivot. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on something that's been bugging me. Do we need a fifth forward? Like, should I be worried about what I'm seeing from these donkeys this preseason, as well as, I guess, I wasn't exactly a fan of Bonnie last season, and I feel like Pierre was pretty up and down last season as well. But do we need another forward? Are we okay to rely on Pierre and Bonnie as like designated B strikers, Mikko?
Related to that, there is actually this rumor going on by Sky Sports that if we sell Luis Henrique, we would actually go for the fifth forward, which would be in the type of Lukman, Nico Paas and such.
And not Jones? Or is that a separate thing again?
I think that's separate. I think Jones might be kind of coming either way.
That'd be instead of signing a wingback replacement, we'd be signing a fifth forward, which I've been aiming for a fifth forward of substance for like a decade. So by all means.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, it sometimes feels that we might need that one, because we saw last season how much, for example, Pio had to play, and he's a young kid, and well, young guys can play, but sometimes it feels it's a bit forced in a sense that they need we need to let them grow, and putting so much on their shoulders, it's not maybe always the best solution to kind of develop them.
In all
And
seriousness, though, like, do you fifth forward?
yeah, it's maybe in some other formation, not in
Yeah, like
our current
you go
one.
like 3-4-3 when you need a goal. You put Thuram out wide with Diouf. I don't know, just like
Yeah, I like counter counter argument. The fifth forward is that we are already scoring a lot of goals, and do we need more from the attack? But then I guess bringing in not kind of a player we already have, but more this kind of a crippler or player who can kind of do a bit different things than, for example, PO can. Uh, would that make it a bit more easier for us to play? We have discussed this topic like 2 years already, or even more, and maybe like would that change something for us? Maybe it would, and maybe that's the kind of motive why this kind of thing is moving there, that we might be going for this more forward type player than the left wing back in this situation.
So you're in favor of it. You think we should get a fifth forward?
I would be open to that
this is where the
because
Diaby rumors made a lot of sense. Sorry, Mikko, go ahead.
yeah, that's true. That's true. It makes more sense in that regard, definitely. Because earlier it might not make that much of a sense. I feel that well, Bio didn't have like super great preseason. I think he started like all games and played a lot, so maybe that had an effect as well. It was hot there all the time and so on, but still, uh, might not be that easy start of the season for Bio. And Bunny is Bunny. He has a lot to prove, at least in my eyes. And then we have, well, Lautaro. He seems to be, I don't know, will he start already against Monza? I don't know, but he still seems to be quite ready. But then Thuram, he's injured still. Like it's a bit of a question mark. We had troubles last season when we didn't have Thuram. Well, mostly when we didn't have Lautaro, we had problems even with Thuram. But when some like one of those guys are missing, well, let's say we have a Champions League games going on, I think I think we have a point if we say that we might need some more offensive talent. What's your guys' take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of having a fifth forward. If you're playing a 3-5-2, I just think injuries happen. You saw it last year. We were really thin on numbers. If you go down, I mean, Thuram gets hurt at least once every season. So when that inevitably happens, you're going to be down to three. Let's just say something happens to another one. It's like, then what do you do? But I think we kind of answered our own question, which is Kivu's more willing to do the 3-4-3 thing. And if that's what we need to do to get by for a situation, you put Diouf up front, you put Luis Henrique up front, like you have options. And just given the squad limitations, given like how big we can make this team, depending on how things shake out, but if Luis Henrique stays and we sign Curtis Jones, like I think that's going to be the final state of the team. It's just you can only register so many players for Serie A. You can only register so many players in the Champions League, and it's kind of hard to find. Like your fifth forward needs to be a veteran player who is willing to sit on the bench for long chunks of the season, but is able to stay in good enough shape that they can still impact a match when they come off the bench. Because you can't waste a spot on a young developmental player. Like you can't make Bonnie your fifth forward because Bonnie needs theoretically the chance to grow and get better by playing in matches. So like the Alexis Sanchez prototype is who you need as a fifth forward, but that person also needs to be willing to accept a bit part role. And that's why Mkhitaryan is the ultimate team player. Like you basically need a forward version of Mkhitaryan is what I'm saying. And those are hard to find. It's kind of like you're looking at like late career Ribery when he was playing at Salernitana or whatever else. It's a tough find, and they're not easy to go out and get in the market. So given what the squad has looked like, the only time we ever had five forwards was when we had Taremi, Arnautovic, and Correa as the reserves, and that went swimmingly, as you all know. So I have a hard time seeing us getting there, but I would I'd like it. Like, I think it's a good idea. So we're gonna transition to everyone's favorite game, buy or sell, to do kind of quick hitters on the remaining aspects of their Mercato. We have about 2 weeks left of it right now. So there's gonna be a lot of movement between now and then. I have 5 topics that I'm sure everyone's curious to hear Jay and Mikko's thoughts on, so we can cover these off and should address everything else outstanding. So I'm gonna start with one that's fresh in my mind after yesterday's friendly appearance where John Stones scored the winner. The winner, of course, was assisted by one Benji Pavard. So I'll start with you, Jay. Will you buy or sell that Benji Pavard is an Inter player when their Mercato closes in a couple weeks? Buy meaning he is still here, sell meaning he is gone.
100% buy. He is staying, and he'll play. As for how well he will play, only time will tell. And I think there's a really interesting conversation on Pavard and as well. Like, it was never really confirmed as to why or what happened. I guess to kind of end his, or at least temporarily end his Inter career at the end of not last season but the season before. We heard rumors of some kind of dressing room fallout or maybe a lack of effort or something on his part, and then that promptly sent him out the door to Marseille for a season, and he obviously came back, and now here he is, and the reports seem to suggest that he's rejected a lot of opportunities to go elsewhere, and there's not much interest to begin with. This is a guy who's getting up there in age. I think 30, not mistaken, maybe 29. Has a fairly hefty salary and plays in a position where a lot of other teams don't facilitate, right? He plays at right centre back in a back three. That's his best position. That's the reason he came to this club, because he wanted to play in that position under Inzaghi. If he goes to another club, I mean, how many big teams out there that check Pavard's boxes would play him in a back three? There are very few big clubs out there that do that. Well, like Chelsea or something, Milan. Other than that, they're all back four teams, and they don't need a kind of in-between centre-back who's maybe not good enough defensively to be one of two centre-backs, but not good enough attacking-wise to be the sole right-back either. So that's kind of the story of Pavard's career. That's why we were able to get him as this opportunity from Bayern Munich. And ultimately, I'll get to the point. The track seems to have gone very, very cold for any club to swoop in and take Pavard. Maybe if he goes, it'll be like another Marseille type situation where a club comes in and asks for him on loan. I could see that happening, but I still think by and large at this point, the club will be reluctant to take the risk of that, because it would require us to go and get a replacement, obviously. And we do have Bisek and Akanji who can both play that position. I think this season, it feels like there's just like a vibe of just fucking just winging it. Don't you think? For some reason, I feel like that's what the club's modus operandi is, and for some reason, I'm just at a point where I'm okay with it as well. Like, we tried to get Palestra, obviously didn't work, or we got fucked over at the last second. Rather, I tried to get Kaleli, that fell apart due to a one in a 1,000 heart condition that was undetected. So Mercato was very much improvised in some ways. After being linked to the was it Guela or Jayla Douay and Diaby again, and can't remember, there was someone else from Verona, Begali, I think. After being linked to a whole host of right backs, we end up going all the way back to Djed Spence. The whole Chalobah situation, the whole Pavard situation, the Romero situation, everything just seems to be kind of haphazard, but in a somewhat enjoyable way. Maybe I'm just so kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? Conditioned by the craziness of Inter that I've become to enjoy the craziness myself, but it feels improvised, and that's what I feel about the Pavard situation too. There's like, well, I guess he's not, he's not causing any problems right now. I guess Lautaro hasn't kicked up a fuss about, no, I refuse to work with him. You have to get rid of him or anything like that. And I guess, we can, even if we have Akanji and Bisek in his position, we can rotate them across the rest of the pitch. If I'm not mistaken, Akanji was playing left centre back for a little while yesterday against Betis because we had Pavard on the right, Stones in the middle, and Akanji on the left. So, like I said, improvisation seems to be the name of the game, and because of that, I feel like the boundaries are somewhat pushed, and for that reason, Pavard will 100% stay.
The word you're looking for is fluid. It's just been a very fluid Mercato where you never really know what's going to happen next, and there's not obvious targets that we spent all summer negotiating down. It is just a matter of decisions and pivots, and some of that out of our control, some of that in our control. But Pavard just seems like the latest example of a pivot where we went into the summer where he was 100% leaving, and now who knows what's going to happen. So that's what I'm going to ask you, Mikko. Buy or sell? Is Pavard staying at Inter?
I'm also going to buy this one. I don't think we are kind of able to sell him anymore, and I feel it's more about himself deciding he wants to stay, and we can't do much about that. So then we have made the decision, okay, he is going to stay. What we're gonna do about the situation? And like Jay just mentioned, we had Akanji playing on the left. We have Bisek who can play or have played on the left, and maybe we will discuss this defense situation later. But yeah, I also feel that he's not going anywhere, and he's going to stay. And then it remains to be seen like how it will work out. As an optimist, I hope it will work out better than the last time, at the time when he left, and he's kind of understood the reasons why he left, or kind of was kicked out. So let's hope that will or the attitude or whatever will change there, and or has changed already, and it will be better, because when he arrived, he was a good player and a quality addition to Inter. So yeah, I'm buying this one and hoping it's going to be all right with him.
I don't think there's any doubt he can be a positive contributor this season if he makes up his mind to do so. One thing, you never follow players as closely when they're not on your own club. And I will say I didn't really understand how fickle of a personality Pavard is. Like, you saw him forcing his way out of Bayern, and just thought it was more amusing than anything at the time. Like, he had finished that chapter of his career, he wanted to move on. But the more you see about Pavard, like, this guy is he beats to his own drum, and sounds like he ruffled some feathers in the locker room. There was the paddle incident with Theo when he allegedly had an ankle injury, which I think is a big cause of some of these issues. There were also some reports last year that his agent was calling and demanding answers for why he wasn't starting matches early in the campaign before he got shipped out to Marseille. So, high baggage player, but I'm not going to question his quality. Like, when he's engaged, when he chooses he wants to be somewhere and contribute, he's capable of it. And just based on all the social media activity, it sure feels like he really wants to be here. And maybe he learned his lesson from his year out, in exile, and he's going to come back this year with something to prove. So I'm going to buy this one too. I wouldn't be shocked if we had just dump him the last week of the Mercato, but I just think he wants to be here, and ultimately he controls his destiny. So I think he'll stick around.
But is he not like one of those players who got caught cheating, and now he's on last chance saloon, and he's making all the right, he's giving all the right signs now, but how much can you trust him, kind of thing? Like
Right. Like, how do you know he's not going to break again? So it's,
exactly. It's just in his DNA. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I mean, like he will leave one day and it will be messy when he leaves, but maybe we can squeeze one more year out of him. So I am anti preseason matches. I take no insights from them. I usually refuse to watch them, but I understand cultural movements when I see them. And El Football is definitely a cultural movement as Andy Diouf takes the world by storm. So this one's nice and simple for you, Mikko. Buy or sell, Andy Diouf runs away with the right wingback starting position.
Wow, that's a tough one. I we discussed this a bit already. Uh, like I mentioned, they are kind of the opposites, Spence and Diouf, and um, I don't know. This is a tough one because I feel we're in Italy, so it's always defense first, like ultimately. But is Kivo going to be different? Is he so much different that he wants the attack first approach? I'm going to say no. I'm going to sell this one because I feel Kivu is gonna love Spence and his physicality, his defending, his pace, a kind of ability to play the higher tempo. That's my like sudden analysis. What's gonna happen on the right flank? But yeah, I kind of hope it goes the other way because it means that Diouf is really going to take a couple steps forward and being able to be so effective offensively that Kivu has no option than to mostly pick him versus Spence. But I'm going to sell this one.
Jay, you're a man of culture. Surely you have more faith in young Andy.
Yes and no. This is a great question. As Mikko said, it's a really difficult one to answer because uh, Diouf is basically Maradona to Spence's Pele, right? Pele's the institution guy, whereas Diouf is like the hero of the people. You know what I'm saying? He's the grassroots hero that everyone's rooting for. So myself included somehow, and I want to see him succeed. I think that despite all the memes and criticism from some, throwaway weekly English language into podcasts, calling him a bum of a player at a failed signing and a waste of 25 million, and all this kind of hurtful language. Despite everything, he's somehow become like a fairly exciting prospect, but that's all he remains until he starts doing what he's been doing in preseason against genuine big clubs, and that still feels like a little bit of a bridge too far. So I think it's a very difficult question to answer, but I'm going to side with Mikko here and say sell. I think Spence's athleticism and his defensive solidity, hopefully, will give Kivu the kind of, or make Kivu's decision for him to go with Spence as a very regular player. And even if his technical ability is not like amazing, nor his attacking output, but I think Spence will become a regular starter at the right wing-back position. And I think we will unfortunately see probably a little bit less of Diouf than a lot of fans might have been thinking, given his recent preseason heroics.
The thing you guys are failing to acknowledge is that Andy Diouf has that dog in him. He is fearless. He doesn't care what the haters say. He doesn't care what the opposition say. But in all seriousness, like this guy, he's fearless on the pitch. Like when he gets the ball, he's not afraid of the moments. And we make fun of this team at times for being deferring, they shy away from opportunities. Well, Andy Diouf's not that guy. He wants the ball at his feet. He wants this opportunity to make something happen, and he's not afraid to take on defenders 1v1. He's not afraid to get in the opposition's 16-yard box and try and make some moves. So I think Diouf has a chance of running away with this thing. He's going to have the built-in advantage of having been here all preseason, training with Kivu. I know he'll be starting the next game against Monza and probably against Kyrie the week after that. It's like, I think we're in the midst of a cultural movement, guys. I think Diouf's going to win, blow us away these first 2 weeks, and the job's going to be his. And Spence will get his minutes. I mean, we all know we played tons of matches. There's plenty of opportunities for them both to get their time to shine. But I think when we get into the big matches, the first name on the team sheet for Kiva is going to be Andy Diouf. So I'm buying.
That's fucking crazy.
I agree. But the one angle is that most of the time in a season we play against so-called lesser opponents, and I can see Diouf starting against lesser opponents. So yeah, there is this angle, but but I agree, it's a bit of crazy to start with Andy Diouf against Kenan Yildiz, for example.
He's the only dangerous left winger left in the league, Mikko, once Leao leaves.
If he leaves. But okay, yeah, that's a nice nice take that we have at least some kind of a difference in this picks.
Shout out Sterling for fully selling me on the Diouf hype train. So I've got 2 more left for you guys. I'll do this one first because this is probably the biggest question left in the transfer window. It's nice and simple. Jay, buy or sell? Inter purchase Curtis Jones before the Mercato closes?
Another really tough question. I don't know. I honestly don't know, and I'm going to say sell, just on the side of cautiousness. I still feel like there's a lack of necessity there for or at least in the eyes of management. I won't say for myself, but the midfield is fairly congested. The fact that Luis Henrique seems, maybe your last question is something to do with Luis Henrique. So I don't know if I'm spoiling it, but what's the deal with that guy? Every day it's like a different thing. It's, 1 second he's super close to Roma for 30 million. The next day it's stalled because the player himself has not opened up, and the next day
that is in fact the last question.
Okay, right. I will forget I said anything. But it is kind of linked, and so if Henrique stays, or if we're not able to get good money for Henrique, then that directly impacts the budget for Curtis Jones. Having said that, we probably don't even need to sell Henrique to buy Curtis Jones from a financial standpoint. As in from like a balance standpoint, we can afford him without needing to sell, but that's another story altogether. And we have a lot of midfielders, right? Got, who do we have? Stankovic, Hakan, Barella,
Aslani,
Zielinski. yeah, that's right. We have Aslani as well. Frattesi gone, but basically got 6 midfielders, 2 for each position. 7 if you include Aslani, and 8 if you include Diouf. So to add another midfielder there is, I feel like it's not going to be a super high priority for the management. And as you mentioned, the Mercato seems very fluid. So, however, the midfield situation does not. Mkhitaryan's not going anywhere, regrettably. Stankovic doesn't seem to be going anywhere. 0 rumors about any of Barella or Hakan or Zielinski going anywhere, or Sucic for that matter. So it seems that midfield is set. I don't expect to see too much movement, and I feel like because there's not like this gaping hole necessity like there was a right wing back, this glaring hole following Dumfries' departure, I feel like Oaktree and co will be less pressured or feel less demand to go out and buy Curtis Jones to supplement the midfield. And let's say we do buy Curtis Jones, does that not mean that we need to get rid of some players in midfield? But we can't get rid of Mkhitaryan is the obvious one to get rid of because we just fucking renewed him. So is there even space for Curtis Jones? Despite him trying to make space by liking every single Inter post and interrelated post from Inter players on social media. He's doing his best for whatever fucking reason. But
he's also been frozen out of the Liverpool squad. Like they're not bringing him to friendlies now.
No, really, I don't even know. But yeah, like I said, ultimately, it seems like the player wants it, and there was probably an appetite from, at least from Marotta, to get it done. But I think put a gun to Marotta's head, he probably says it's not a priority given the fact that midfield is congested, and it might be still a lot of money for a player who could be free in 12 months. So I'm going to sell.
I really struggle with the transfer fee on this one. Like the alleged like 35, 40 million Liverpool wants for a player with 1 year left on his contract. Candidly, if you offered me Curtis Jones last year with 2 years left on his contract at 40 million, I would have thought it was an overpay. So with 1 year left on his contract, it's a dicey proposition, and it tells you how ridiculous the EPL market is. But Mikko, are you buying or selling that Curtis Jones will be an Inter player by the end of the Mercato?
Yeah, there's an interesting question in the regard of, do we need him? And as Jay mentioned, or listed, we have 6 midfielders plus the extras who will be out. But then you can think that, is it enough to have Mkhitaryan as the 6th midfielder? And I think it might not be enough. I'm kind of, since we started to get linked to Curtis Jones in January, I started to feel that this kind of player would be very nice addition. He's like, what is it, 25 years old or something. He has EPL experience, Champions League experience. And then there are these stories that Kivu really wants the guy. He really wants to add this guy to the roster. I feel this is absolutely buy. I'm like 90% sure it's gonna happen. There are the stories that the deal is already done, and I don't know, for whatever reasons. Maybe it's the selling of Luis Henrique or something. And there are stories or kind of these calculations that we don't really need to even sell anyone. We got rid of Frattesi's valuations in our books, that we can basically replace him with Curtis Jones. But whatever the case is, I'm very confident we're gonna get the guy. So I'm gonna buy this one. And I would be very happy to see him join Inter. I think we need to keep solidifying our midfield. And this would be an extremely helpful addition in that front, in my mind.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say is we do need a younger midfielder. Like if you look at what the midfield's going to be next season, Mkhitaryan will be gone, presumably. You never know. Hakan likely gone, I'd say at this point, more likely than not. And Zielinski is going to be 32, 33 next year. So there is a need for a younger midfielder. Don't forget Barella's creeping closer to 30. So if we can sign a guy in his prime, it's needed in the midfield. I understand there's a body issue, but I will say, like, when Mkhitaryan was renewed, the train of thought all along was that he's going to be the 7th midfielder. He'll be the emergency midfielder off the bench, and I'm sure I'm sure somehow, some way, he'll be subbed on for the last 30 minutes against Monza. But like the role we were promised for Mkhitaryan was 7th midfielder, and if that's the case, there's one more midfielder coming, and having Curtis Jones and Zielinski share that left center mid spots seems like the right fit. So Jay successfully predicted the last one of these, but we'll end on it anyway. So out of nowhere, there were reports that Roma. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interject. Can I just say something about Curtis Jones before we move on?
Do it.
I feel like he's in a very, very similar situation to Spence, where I described Spence as a interesting prospect because he's poised to kind of take off right now. Spence is 26, so it's not like some youth, right? This is not like some 21-year-old talent that we want to see explode now. He should be hitting his prime pretty much now. Curtis Jones, similar, 25 years old, and like Djed Spence, neither of them have been like bona fide starters at their respective clubs. They're both they start probably, half the games, if that, and then get subbed on every now and again. So they play probably like 60 to 70, I'll say 50 to 60% of the minutes available. These are not like core players that were signing from Liverpool or Tottenham, right? So there's something that we believe in their inherent skill set, in the way that they play the game, in their positional alignment with what we want to do in our squad. That's what we believe in, and that's what we're making the investment for. But it's not necessarily based on just years and years and years of being a undisputed starter. And to that end, I feel like that weighs against Curtis Jones as well. We're still kind of banking on him to take a step up upon arrival, but I feel like the odds are more in Spence's favor because the system will suit him better. Whereas Curtis Jones has a tendency to has a harder prospect to face in acclimatizing himself in a midfield, which is already extremely familiar. Like, how many games have we started with Barella, Hakan, and Mkhitaryan, as the starting trio, probably in the hundreds at this stage, right? They've played together for so many years. I feel like Jones comes with a greater risk than Spence. Is more of despite having more games, I believe, in the Premier League than Spence, Jones is probably a riskier proposition. And I feel like the management will be seeing that as well. So despite our hopes that Mkhitaryan will be the seventh midfielder, I feel like he's probably closer to fourth or our absolute
Third.
best. Yeah, first choice. Pretty much best case scenario, sixth. And I feel like, what I'm saying now is just kind of like an add-on to what I was saying earlier, that I feel like from the management's perspective, they will see Curtis Jones as a much lesser priority, and therefore we will not sign him. But so I'm selling. But back to the final question.
Yes, Luis Henrique, who out of nowhere reports surfaced that we want to sell him all of a sudden. And not only that, but Roma are interested, and Roma have total agreement with Inter. And this is interesting. So, like, the train of thought right now is that Luis Henrique is the backup left wing back. Augusto has regressed as a left wing back. He's going to serve more as a left center back, vice Bastoni. Maybe left wing back at times where we need a defensive presence, but Henrique is the more attacking option, and he prefers being on the left because he can cut in on his right foot. And those are the lies we're being fed. So then you see Gasperini is interested, probably is using Henrique as a more conventional winger, like he was when he was at Marseille. And it's unclear. There are mixed reports on whether or not there's actually agreement between Henrique and Roma himself, but there is like confirmation from just about everyone that we have agreement with Roma, but he's a backup choice. Luis Henrique is they're pursuing some Portuguese kid from Porto. If they strike out on him, they will return for Henrique, and at that point, maybe they sign him. And I don't really know what we're doing at that point. I don't know if we're going out and signing another wingback. I don't know if we're looking for alternative options, but we can table all that stuff. Just the buy or sell is buy or sell. Luis Henrique leaves Inter by the end of their Mercato. I'll start with you, Mikko.
Yeah, this is kind of this kind of came out of nowhere when it popped up, this whole Roma thing. and it felt a bit surreal in a sense that given what we saw last season, that someone would be ready to pay like 25 million. I don't know, there were mentions of 30 million, but probably that's including bonuses. But anyway, like these numbers are something that I'm like packing this guide at the airport, like go already. Like if this is the deal we can do, like there's no question I should do it. But will it happen? That's another question. I've seen some kind of reports. Well, this is again like reports I read. You can you can take them with a grain of salt. But there was this report that there are not only Roma but also EPL clubs after him. But there's been no leaks about those deals that much. So maybe there are agents working on these deals, like these days they do the most deals anyway. But I remain optimistic that we can do the sell. We can get the guy out, because if there is a chance to do it, I really much like us to do it. I can't see any too positive future for the guy at Inter, given what we saw last season. He played more than Dumfries, so it wasn't like he wasn't able to prove his worth or anything like that. He played a lot, but he always kind of fell flat. And the right side, left side, yeah, it kind of felt or looked that he was maybe a bit better, maybe more comfortable playing on the left, but nothing I saw which would make me hesitate selling him if there is a deal to be made to sell him. You mentioned, Andrew, the situation with Roma, that they have this deal with Porto, and they try to get this I don't remember the name of the guy, but some pretty expensive deal. And he's not even a left winger; he's like an attacking midfielder. But they are looking for the left wingers as well, like the guy we were linked to, the Lyon guy, Fofana. They are linked to him as well. So there are a lot of obstacles on this deal, because it seems that he is not Luis Henrique is not the first option for Roma to spend the money on. But I want to remain optimistic, and I want to buy this one. I hope we want to get rid of this guy. It seems clear that we are not pushing him out, but I feel that we are ready to make the money out of this thing. I don't know if it's related to Jones. It's difficult to say from the outside, but there was this one thing. Was it today or yesterday? Someone reported that our young center back Leonardo Bobbio, who has performed pretty well in this preseason, that he would be part of the first team in the upcoming season. I don't know, does that mean anything? Because you can throw him to under 23 team anyway, play there, and then train with the first team, maybe take part in some of the first team games. So how official is that, and does it mean anything that it's official? Maybe it does. I don't know. But if he is part of the first team as like a normal member, normal squad player, he's not part of the under 23 team, that might change something, in a sense that is Carlos Augusto seen as the DiMarco backup after all, and we don't need Luis Henrique anymore in that case. That's the interesting part here, and we would figure out how we do with the left flank with Bastoni in defense. But I'm going to buy this one. I'm hopeful we can sell him and get rid of this issue.
Okay. So Mikko's hope casting. Jay,
Yep.
buy or sell Luis Henrique is gone at the end of the transfer window.
Another hard one to call. I got to give you credit. These are some really, really difficult questions to come to a conclusive answer on, or at least give a definitive thought on, because they can go either way. And I'm like kind of equally torn on buying or selling for any of these. I'm going to actually go with buy. I feel like, I don't know, there's something about the rumors that just convinced me. You know, sometimes you see a rumor, and I mean, rumors are not an exact science, obviously. So you kind of piece together your own understanding of the situation and the things that are being stated in the rumors, and I guess you kind of make your own decision as to how likely or realistic or based in truth a rumor is. But I don't know, something about this rumor cycle about Luis Enrique going to Roma just seemed a bit more convincing. Maybe Romano just did a better job this time around, or Shira, or whoever it is, reported this to Mazio. I know it wasn't Padula, but anyway, regardless of what the current situation of this transfer is, something about the kind of initial burst and the certainty with which the reports were coming out, and the speed at which they were all kind of unified on the deal is set between Inter and Roma, 30 million, and now all that's left is for the player to accept, and that's where we seem to have come to a standstill. I still feel like the deal kind of, again, assuming the rumors are believable to an extent, I feel like we've come to a very near point of completion very, very quickly. And when that happens, things tend to get done eventually. So I do think that he will move to Roma. And then, yeah, you're right, that opens up a whole new can of worms, because what are we doing for the right back situation then? We don't even have our backup anymore, I guess, unless we're going with Spence and Diouf, which just seems a little bit lightweight. I don't know. Yeah, not the topic of this question, but that's another question for itself, I guess.
So I am selling this one. It feels too good to be true. I agree, like the sources of the rumors are reputable. This definitely feels more reliable than other news stories we've been linked to this Mercato, but I can't get there. Why would Gasperini want this guy after watching him for a season in Serie A? Why would Roma pay 30 million for him? Just none of it quite makes enough sense for me, and it just feels too good to be true. So I will sell that one. And I realized I did not answer the Curtis Jones one, so I'm going to be a buy on Curtis Jones arriving. I do think that gets done before the end of the Mercato. So what we will conclude, as always, with Jay's hot betting tips. I know the EPL season kicks off next week. If you want to do a match specifically, if you want to do a future, dying to know where your head is at heading into this EPL season.
So I think Arsenal are a lock for the title, and that's not me taking the piss or just being my usual self. I just think there's a massive power vacuum at the top there, and Arsenal have consolidated that by spending money on signings which I don't think are particularly exciting, to be honest, like Bruno Guimaraes and some other dickhead here and there. But by and large, the gap still exists. I feel like we should have been in for Leandro Trossard. I feel like that was a good opportunity to buy like another forward option there. But anyway, yeah, it's got to be Arsenal. Man City's transfer market has been pretty dismal. United also kind of hit and miss. I think United are kind of handcuffed by the fact that they committed so heavily on this trident of Benjamin Šeško, Brian Mbeumo, and Mateus Cunha, and I don't think any of them are particularly elite. I think they're all like kind of 7 out of 10 players who cost them fuckloads of money, so they have to stick with them, and they can't afford like a real, I throw the name out there just for the sake of it, but like there's a lot of teams out there who need like a Lautaro Martinez, just like a lead off the line, guarantees you 20 to 25 goals, and has some pedigree of winning, and that's what Arsenal lack. That's what Man United lack. It's what Chelsea lack. It's what Liverpool lack, and that's why I feel like there's such a it's really difficult to envision some of these teams having the reliability and consistency to compete for a league title. The only one who does, like I said, really come close is Arsenal because of their proven track record from last season. This Maresca Man City is a completely unknown entity, despite having players like Haaland still, and there are other big names. Like, does Man City even have big names anymore? Like, I've always felt like Jeremy Doku was a bit of a hack. Savinho is a complete hack. Phil Foden has fallen off a cliff. I mentioned Haaland is like a guarantee, but
Complete
other
hack.
than that, Gvardiol, Kovacic has always been like a bit part player and spent last season
What happened
injured.
to Rangers, man?
He moved to Al Qadsiya. He moved to like Saudi Arabia or something.
He was like Serie A midfield of the year, and he flamed out in 1 year at City.
And he started fairly strongly as well from memory, but then towards the second half of the season, I think he just fell out of favor, and for whatever reason, seemed to be out of the project very quickly. But in an instance, they've got some, they've got some good players like O'Reilly and Nunez. I think on the flanks are establishing themselves, but this is not the same like star-studded Man City as even a few seasons ago with pre-washed up Boateng and not Boateng, De Bruyne, and Bernardo Silva and whatnot. So yeah, I'm not that sold on Man City right now. They don't have the pep factor, obviously. Liverpool's Mercato has been horrendous, and again, Iraola. This is like the Spanish Italiano, in that he's got some results at a smaller club, and the bigger club is now gambling on him to take it up to the next level, and that's always a risk. That's always hit and miss. So I guess Chelsea have the most proven manager pedigree with Xabi Alonso, but even he has only had one good season, one like filthy amazing season at Leverkusen where they came to like a minor treble almost before getting spanked by Gasperini. So, but they weren't unbeaten. They were the Arsenal of Germany, in that they were invincible, right? And displaced Bayern Munich. So even Xabi Alonso, and then he obviously got randomly kicked out of Real Madrid fairly early into his tenure. Point I'm trying to make, long-winded rant to say that Arsenal are obviously the same situation with us. Arsenal are the existing dominant power, and the rest of the teams are in flux. And so you expect Arsenal to win the same way you expect us to win.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap up there. We did go a bit longer this time. It's been a minute since we podcasted. We'll be back next week with a season preview. Don't worry, we'll make up for the extra long episode and ad revenue, so we'll all be made whole. But until then, Mikko, please do us the honors.
Forza Inter.
And Forza Aslani. Catch you guys next time.